the global stage. Global stage. Hello, I want to welcome you to the global stage. It is always an honor to have you. And today I want to talk to you about peptic ulcer. Like I said, this platform seeks to bring to you God's perspective of our universe with the purpose of unveiling the truth. And we talk about anything that concerns man. And for today's program, I want to talk to you about the #1 natural remedy for curing an ulcer or a peptic ulcer. And before I do that, I want us to go through what a peptic ulcer is. And there is a growing concern of peptic ulcer in our world. And peptic ulcer could be a debilitating case if it's left untreated. And any sickness comes with some sort of pain in our body, and the pain can be a distraction to your daily routine as a person, and especially can also be a distraction to you serving God well, because God wants you well spiritually, physically, financially, and spiritually. And if you are sick in your body, it can pose as a threat or as a distraction. And one of such conditions that poses as a distraction to you serving God properly is an ulcer or a peptic ulcer. And so before I take you through or give you the #1 natural remedy for curing an ulcer, let's first of all learn something about peptic ulcer to help us identify this particular condition. So let's learn something about ulcer now. I'll be right back. The global stage. Global stage. Alright, welcome back. So let's learn something about peptic ulcer. First of all, an ulcer is simply a painful sore that is present in the mucous layer, a protective layer or coating around the digestive system or the tract. And the tract is made up of the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the duodenum, and the intestines. And peptic ulcer is one of the common types of ulcers we have in the human body. And this is particularly associated with pepsin alongside HCl in the stomach lining. HCl simply means hydrochloric acid. And so the GIT or the tract consists of the mouth, like I said, the esophagus, the stomach, your small intestines, and the large intestines as well. So let's look at what peptic ulcer really is. So there are 3 particular types of peptic ulcer. There are a lot of types, but I'm going to give you the 3 types of peptic ulcer. Alright, so what are the 3 types of peptic ulcers we have? #1 is what we call a gastric ulcer. The other one is a duodenal ulcer, and the less common one is what we call esophageal ulcer. Now, with the gastric ulcer, it is the ulcer or the sore present in the stomach, and usually once a person eats, the pain gets worse. And with the duodenal ulcer, it is present in your duodenum, and eating improves that particular pain. That is, the pains become less. So that is the difference between the ulcer, the gastric ulcer, and the duodenal ulcer. The only way to distinguish between these 2 types of ulcers is one improves the pain, the other worsens the pain. And the less type is what we call the esophageal ulcer, which is present in the esophagus. There are other types of ulcer that we call the stress ulcer, the mouth ulcer, or the oral ulcer, but these are the 3 basic types of peptic ulcer we have. Now, what are the causes of peptic ulcer? There are a lot of causes, but I just listed 5 causes for you to get. The first #1 cause is what we call the bacteria called the Helicobacter pylori or H. pylori. This bacteria causes the infection and inflammation in the stomach. The other cause could also be what we call the frequent use of certain medications such as NSAIDs. NSAIDs simply means non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The other one could also be a stomach cancer can also cause an ulcer, or radiation therapy can also cause an ulcer. We also have what we call excessive stomach acid secretion caused by stress, alcohol, smoking, excessive caffeine consumption, and long starvation. So those who consume a lot of caffeine should be mindful that they are increasing their chances of getting an ulcer. Those who have long history of alcohol or smoking also cause this excessive secretion of acid, thereby causing a peptic ulcer. So those are the 5 basic causes of ulcer as well. Now, having said that, we are going to look at some of the common symptoms or signs one could identify to know that the person has an ulcer or not. Now, there are common ones and there are lesser ones. The common ones we know, number one is what we call epigastric or abdominal pains or tenderness. The other one is also palpitation. You could also have what we call body shakiness or radiating pains. And this is one of the significant symptoms of an ulcer, where the pain travels from different parts of the body. Today is your abdomen, today it could be your waist, today it could be your back. The other one, you could also experience heartburns as well, or dizziness. You could also experience blood in your stool, and sometimes unusual headaches or fever and discomfort after meals, which normally is called indigestion. You could also experience nausea or vomiting of food or blood. And then the lesser common symptoms or signs could also be, you could also experience what we call sleep problems, bad breath, coffee ground vomit, or what we call melanal stool, that is tarry black stool, and sometimes abdominal waste as well. So these are some of the signs and symptoms. Now let's look at the complications of ulcer if it's left untreated. The first complication one could get is an internal bleeding leading to iron deficiency anemia. The other one could also be what we call perforation, eventually leading to peritonitis, that is inflammation of peritoneum. And this is an emergency, and so requires urgent medical repair. And so once some experience what we call peritonitis, it calls for an emergency and you shouldn't wait at all. The other complication could also be what we call scarring or strictures that can eventually lead to what we call pyloric stenosis. With this particular condition, one of the symptoms you could experience is indigestion or even heartburns, and it's very similar to what we call acid reflux. So once ulcer or peptic ulcer is left untreated, these are some of the complications one can develop. Now, having said that, let's look at how to diagnose a peptic ulcer. Now, the diagnosis is based on the symptoms I told you, coupled with some other blood tests like the H. pylori test and some other blood samples like upper endoscopy. And then the treatment also depends on the underlying cause and could be surgical or non-surgical. And when it's non-surgical, that is when we take in antibiotics. We take what we call proton pump inhibitors, we take antacids, and we take what we call the bismuth supplement as well. So those are the non-surgical treatment for an ulcer. Now, if one has an ulcer, or if one wants to reduce his or her risk of getting an ulcer, what must he do? Number one, the person must be mindful of taking beans. So if you have an ulcer, these things, what I've just listed for you are not good for you. Number one is beans. Number one is, the other one is processed dairy milk, then pepper, spicy foods, egg yolk, acidic fruits such as pineapple, NSAIDs like aspirin and ibuprofen. Now, when one has an ulcer, the only oral medication normally we require or we approve for one to take is paracetamol. But when you have an ulcer, you shouldn't take an aspirin or ibuprofen or these NSAIDs. The other one could also be alcohol. Like I said, alcohol can also cause an ulcer. So if you have an ulcer, please, you must abstain from alcohol and then smoking. And then any other food that makes you uncomfortable, you should also avoid when you have an ulcer. Now, having said the don't, let's look at the do's of a peptic ulcer. Now, what should you do when you have an ulcer? First of all, we say you must eat a little at a time. Very important. Don't rush when you are eating. And also eat more of the cereal, like the wheat, like the oat, like the millet, which is very important. Now, also, one of the things you must do is that you shouldn't go to sleep right after sleeping. At least you should wait for 2 hours before you go to bed after eating. And then hydration is very, very important as well. We talk about the importance of water in my previous video, how water helps with the acidity of your system. So hydrate yourself a lot with water. Then also eat more of the fresh green vegetable because they contains a lot of vitamin that can help you cure your ulcer. Then also increase your intake of vitamin E, the B complex, and vitamin C and folic acid. So these are some of the do's and don'ts of peptic ulcer. The global stage. The global stage. Now, having said all this, I told you I'll give you the #1 natural remedy for curing an ulcer, and it's very simple. This is one of the common commodities around us, and the plant or the vegetable is cabbage. Yes, that greeny leafy vegetable called cabbage is the #1 natural remedy for curing an ulcer. Now, the magic about cabbage has got to do with a sulfur-containing compound called glucosinolates. These are the compound that is responsible for killing that bacteria called the H. pylori that causes a peptic ulcer. So once you consume a lot of cabbage contains sulfur containing compound called glucosinolates that helps you cure your peptic ulcer by getting rid of that bacteria that causes the ulcer. Because cabbage also has vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin E, and C. Also contains phosphorus, iodine, iron, enzymes, and glutamine and oxidants. And so once you are consuming cabbage, it is safe to say that you can cure your ulcer if medication has failed you. Now, what is so special about cabbage? Like I told you, that sulfur containing compound is what does the magic. Now, there was a study that was done to compare the efficacy of omeprazole. Omeprazole is a medication we give to people with an ulcer. Omeprazole is a proton pump inhibitor, and they made a comparison between the efficacy of omeprazole and cabbage, and it showed that the group that took the cabbage juice had an 83 efficacy rate to 81 efficacy rate for those who took the medication. So cabbage was slightly better than omeprazole, plus there was no side effects compared to omeprazole, which has some side effects like nausea. So cabbage compared to omeprazole had an 83 efficacy rate of curing ulcer than omeprazole. Now, another study that was done was to compare cabbage juice and then cimetidine. Cimetidine is also another drug we give to people who have a peptic ulcer. And at the end of the study, it was realized that the group that consumed cabbage juice healed their ulcers in 15 days compared to 28 days in the group that took the medication called cimetidine. So that suggests that taking cabbage averagely in 15 days was far better in curing the peptic ulcer than those who took the cimetidine for 28 days. So that is some of the evidence as to the efficacy of using cabbage. Now, how do you prepare cabbage? Very simple. You can make a juice out of it, or you can cut it into pieces and chew. But you must be very careful not to boil cabbage at a higher temperature, because if you do that, it can destroy the vitamins or the minerals or the chemicals in the cabbage that is responsible for curing your ulcer. So what you can do is that you can only steam it for some few minutes to get rid of the toxins, and wash it with salt solution as well. And then you can make a juice out of it. So you can take at least a liter of cabbage juice every day, averagely for 21 days, and you are sure to have your peptic ulcer cured when all other medications has failed you. So that is the #1 natural remedy for curing an ulcer, and it is our own friend, the greeny vegetable called cabbage. I hope you enjoyed this particular video. Kindly share this, because I'm sure there may be somebody who may be suffering from a peptic ulcer, and then medication may have not been working for that particular person. Cabbage is the #1 natural remedy because it has seemed to be more potent than other medication. Plus, it has no side effect, except maybe you are allergic to that particular medication. And so once you start consuming 1 liter of cabbage juice every day for at least 15 days to 21 days, you are sure to cure your gastric ulcer or your duodenal ulcer, which is in all called a peptic ulcer. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Kindly share for somebody to also be blessed. I'll see you some other time. God bless you. The global stage. The global stage.